Have you ever felt a chill run down your spine for no reason? Or heard a strange noise in the dead of night and tried to convince yourself it was just the house settling? We all love a good scary movie, but the truth is, sometimes reality is far more terrifying than fiction. The stories you're about to hear aren't from a Hollywood script. They're real experiences reported by ordinary people who found themselves in situations straight out of a nightmare. These accounts remind us that the world can be a strange and unsettling place, and sometimes the most frightening things are the ones that actually happened. So dim the lights, get comfortable, and prepare yourself. These are 5 real-life horror stories that will make you question everything. Our first story comes from a Reddit user who worked as a late-night security guard at an old, largely abandoned hospital. Most of his job was just walking the empty, echoing halls, making sure everything was secure. One night, while doing his rounds on the decommissioned pediatric ward, he started hearing something faint. It sounded like a child humming. He froze, listening. The humming was soft, melodic, and seemed to be coming from the end of the hallway. Every rational part of his brain told him it was the wind or the old building's pipes, but the sound was too distinct. He cautiously walked toward it, his flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. As he got closer, the humming abruptly stopped. He swept his light across the rooms, all empty, covered in dust sheets. His heart was pounding. He turned to leave, and that's when he heard it again, this time right behind him. A little girl's giggle. He didn't even look back. He sprinted out of there and refused to ever patrol that ward alone again. To this day, he can't explain what he heard, but he's certain he wasn't alone in that empty children's wing. Next, we have a tale from a couple who bought their dream home in the quiet countryside. It was an old house full of character and history. For the first few months, everything was perfect. Then, small, inexplicable things started to happen. Doors they knew they had closed would be found wide open. Objects would move from one room to another when no one was home. They tried to laugh it off, blaming it on faulty latches or their own forgetfulness. But things escalated. One evening, the wife was in the kitchen and saw a dark, shadowy figure pass by the doorway out of the corner of her eye. She called out, thinking it was her husband, but he was upstairs. The figure was tall, featureless, and seemed to suck the light out of the room as it moved. This became a regular occurrence, always seen in their peripheral vision, a fleeting glimpse of something that shouldn't be there. The final straw was when they started hearing heavy, dragging footsteps from the attic directly above their bedroom every night, around 3 a.m. After a particular terrifying night, they hired a paranormal investigation team. The investigators recorded clear electronic voice phenomena, or EVPs, capturing a deep guttural voice whispering the word, "Get out." The couple moved out a week later, leaving their dream home behind for whatever still resided within its walls. This third story is a modern kind of horror, one that could happen to any of us. It comes from a college student named Sarah who was living alone in an off-campus apartment. One night, she was studying when she received a text from an unknown number. It was a picture of her sitting at her desk, taken from outside her own window. Panic set in. She jumped up, ran to the window, and slammed the curtains shut. Her hands were shaking as she called the police. They came and searched the area but found no one. They told her it was probably a prank, but the text continued. The next day, she got another one. "I like your red shirt." She was wearing a red shirt. The sender knew her daily routine, what she was wearing when she was home. She felt like she was being watched every second of the day. She stopped going out after dark and covered all her windows. The police were unable to trace the number. This torment went on for 2 weeks. The psychological stress was immense. She felt like a prisoner in her own home. Finally, she broke her lease and moved back in with her parents, never finding out who was sending those terrifying messages or why they had chosen her. The fear of the unknown stalker stayed with her for years. Our fourth encounter takes us to the deep woods of the Pacific Northwest. A group of 4 experienced hikers were on a multi-day trek deep in a remote national forest. They were miles from any marked trail. On their second night, as they sat around their campfire, they heard a loud, blood-curdling scream echo through the trees. It wasn't an animal they could identify, not a mountain lion, not a bear. It sounded almost human, but distorted and filled with agony. They immediately doused their fire and sat in the pitch-black darkness, listening. A few minutes later, they heard heavy snapping branches, as if something massive was moving through the undergrowth, circling their campsite. It was slow, deliberate, and terrifyingly close. No one dared to make a sound. This went on for what felt like hours. At one point, one of the hikers swore he saw 2 large, glowing red eyes staring at them from just beyond the trees. They huddled together in their tent, sleepless, until the first light of dawn. The moment the sun was up, they packed their gear and hiked non-stop back to their car, not even pausing for water. They never went back to that part of the forest and could never agree on what they heard and saw that night, but they all knew one thing. Something ancient and powerful lives in those woods, and it does not want to be disturbed. Our final story is perhaps the most chilling, because it happened in the most ordinary of places, a family home. A young boy, about 7 years old, started talking about his new friend, who he called Imaginary John. His parents thought it was a normal phase. Kids have imaginary friends. But the details the boy provided were unsettling. He said John was a boy his age, but his clothes were old and dirty, and his skin was very, very pale. He also said that John cried a lot because he missed his mommy. The parents grew concerned when their son started having conversations with John in the middle of the night. One night, the father was woken up by his son's voice. He crept to his son's room and peeked inside. His son was sitting up in bed, talking to the empty corner of the room. "No, John, you can't," the boy said firmly. "That's my dad's. You can't touch it." The father felt a cold dread wash over him. The next day, he asked his son what John had wanted. The boy looked at him, his expression serious, and said, "He wanted to borrow your razor from the bathroom. He said he wanted to show me a game." That afternoon, the parents called a child psychologist and started looking into the history of their house. They discovered that a young boy had died in that very room nearly 80 years prior. They moved out within the month. And there you have it. 5 stories that blur the line between our safe, everyday world and something much, much darker. From a spectral child in a hospital to a shadowy stalker and an imaginary friend who is all too real. These accounts serve as a chilling reminder that we may not be as alone as we think. Whether it's a presence in an old building or a whisper from the woods. These real-life experiences are a testament to the mysteries that lie just beneath the surface of our reality. They prove that sometimes the most terrifying monsters are the ones we can't see. Thank you so much for joining me and listening to these unsettling tales. If you have your own real-life scary story, I'd love to read it in the comments below. Stay safe out there and always trust your instincts. Don't forget to like this video if it gave you the chills, and subscribe to the channel for more explorations into the unknown. See you in the next one.